Hello and welcome to Poetry in Style. So today we're gonna talk about an American poet called Joyce Kilmer, a poet that I discovered not so long ago with a poem called Trees, a beautiful poem that we are going to recite together and analyze to see what we can learn from that poem. But first of all, I'm going to talk about Joyce Kilmer as a person a little bit, because I think it is important to understand his life just a minimum in order to understand this poem. Joyce Kilmer was born on the 6th of December 1886 in a city called New Brunswick in New Jersey, USA, and passed away on the front in France on the 30th of July 1918 at the end of the First World War. As you can see, he had a very short life. He passed away when he was 31 years old. Another interesting and important fact about the life of Joyce Kilmer was that he was Catholic. And at some point, he started doubting his faith. He wasn't sure about his beliefs. But then he found his certainty again in his Catholic faith. And it's interesting because the poem Trees is all about that. It's all about his belief. It's all about the divine. It's all about spirituality. And so together we're gonna analyze that poem and look at it. Trees by Joyce Kilmer. I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breast, a tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray, a tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair, upon whose bosom snow has lain, who intimately lives with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. Only God can make a tree. Indeed. You know, the beautiful thing about that poem, first of all, we're gonna talk about what the poem means, what it, brings about, the message. But before we do that, I always like looking at the style of the poem. I think if you start knowing who I am as a person and what I like as an artist, this is the kind of poem I like. Because it is simple, yet it flows really well. It has this rhyme, it has musicality, and I think it's funny because when I was watching that podcast, one of the things they say is that in Columbia University, where he went, some people mocked the simplicity of his poetry. And apparently, some people, I think it's still to this day, are making this contest based on Joyce Kilmer, on reading the worst poems, the worst poem that they could come up with. And I find that really, if that's true, I find that really stupid. Because in my opinion, it's a very beautiful poem and really well written. Life is composed of many things, but there is simplicity and sophistication. And often simplicity and sophistication are seen as two things being completely opposite. But the reality, in my observation, is that we need both to have a beautiful world. Simplicity can hide sophistication, and sophistication can hide simplicity. And they dance together. In my village, for example, it's a simple village not far from Brussels, with a lot of trees and nice houses where people live and then take the train to go back to work, probably in Brussels and other places, sometime here. My village is called Rixensart. Yet, despite its simplicity, you can go in many houses and find lots of art, sophistication, and you find amazing products in this village. Sophistication, how can sophistication hide simplicity? You have so many poems or pieces of art so well crafted, so well written, so well painted that describe a love story, a simple encounter between a man and a woman. And you write a very sophisticated poem on that. Or you paint a very sophisticated painting on that simple thing. Sophistication that hides simplicity. To go back to that poem, so that's why I like in the style, this musicality. Everybody can read it, or most people can read it and understand. I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against her sweet flowing breast, a tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafing arms to pray. It's simple, yet it flows so well. You can think at a tree. A tree is simple. And there are so many types of tree, and I think it never describes what kind of tree. Is it an oak? Is it a beech? Is it a sequoia? No, it's a tree. Doesn't matter, it's a tree. What tree? Don't know. A tree can have this simple shape, yet inside is this sophistication that brought that tree to life. That's the biological sophistication of the tree. But there is more. There is the spirituality, the spiritual existence of that tree. As I said, Joyce Kilmer at some point doubted his fate. And what you can see from that poem is that at some point he just looked at a tree, and at that moment he had only certainty. There's certainty in that poem. There's a tree, and that tree cannot be God by any other being than spiritual being than God. Only God can make a tree. And there's also humility. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. That's the I'm writing poem, and I can just describe the beauty of that tree, but God makes the tree. The spiritual reality behind a tree, and that poem in its simplicity connects us to nature, connects us to something bigger than ourselves, connects us to the spiritual reality of the world. There's also something that connects us all between human being, nature, animals, everything. And so that's what I wanted to say. That's this poem, this simplicity, this musicality, and this depth of that poem. That, in my opinion, is the way a poem should be written. I mean, this is just what I like personally, because again, I'm exploring different ways of writing poetry, different ways of expressing yourself through the poetic art, and I think that you can write very, very sophisticated poems, or you can write prosaic poems, and it's good because we find so many ways of expressing ourselves. But if I have to choose, that's my preferred way of writing poetry. So that was the poem Trees by Joyce Kilmer. Whenever you feel lost, whenever you don't know where you're going, maybe you should just look at a tree A tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair, upon whose bosom snow has lain, who intimately lives with rain. All these elements, the tree sees it all, like God, you know, embracing all. So this poem, well, that's all I have to say on that poem. I hope you like it and read that poem. Have a good day.